Hello beautiful creative friends, it's Belinda and I'm here today with a short and sweet Traveler's Notebook spread for you for Confessions of a Paper Addict using the brand new Stitched Summer cut file. Now I'm showing you here, I have already gone ahead and cut these letters out from different coloured cardstocks. I'm using a Hip Kit collection here. It's quite an old one, I think it's from September 2022. Now, because I did scale those letters down quite significantly from the way that the cut file originally comes, I did actually have to go in and manipulate the design a little bit before I sent it to cut. When it's used on the larger scale, those stitching holes are perfectly spaced for some hand stitching, but when you scale it down, they become quite a bit closer together, and I knew that if I sent it to cut the way that it was, they would be too close for me to be able to stitch without tearing the small bit of paper that was between each of them. So that's my little hot tip for you. If you are using any kind of cut file and you are scaling down, don't be afraid to manipulate the design before you send it to cut. And in this case, all I did was I went through and I deleted every second stitching hole that was on each of the letters, and then for some of them I had to sort of move the spacing around a little bit, but it worked perfectly and I had no problems whatsoever stitching those letters. Now, as I said, I'm using an older Hip Kit Club collection for this. I don't have a huge amount of product in this one. I think I just had the main kit and the Project Life kit. I didn't have any of the extra papers or anything like that, so I must have gone through the papers, I don't know, 4 or 5 times trying to find something that I wanted to use for the right hand side of this spread, but I just couldn't find anything that really was doing it for me. So I decided to make my own background. I have this stamp here. It's very, 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 very old. I believe it's from Studio Calico. I've got a whole bunch of these sort of strip-based patterned stamps, and I'm doing a little bit of an ombre effect going down the page. Well, it's ombre, rainbow, don't quite know what you'd call it. It is, I've gone through and I've matched my inks to the colors that I used to cut those letters in the word summer out. And I'm trying to sort of overlap a little bit of the inking a little bit, not a huge amount, but just enough so that there's not like a really solid line between each of the colors. I did have a little bit of extra space down at the bottom. I didn't kind of space things out as well as I wanted to, but as well as I had planned to. But rather than go and restamp the whole thing, I just went back and found another pink colored ink. It's a lighter pink there, to fill in that space down the bottom, because I knew that that one right down the bottom, that raspberry, can't remember what it's called, but that raspberry one, it's really, really dark compared to the rest of the colors that are on that page. So I didn't want to have a lot of that showing. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to just place my elements around where I want them to go. So I did actually have a little bit of a play with this in Photoshop and also in Silhouette Studio before I got everything ready. So I had a pretty good idea of where I wanted things to go. So those letters there, you can see I've separated them so that my photo is going to sit nestled in between the letters. And I decided that just to bring a little bit of consistency between the two sides of the spread, that I would repeat that stamped element just on the top and the bottom of the left-hand side page, and using the same colors that I used on the right-hand side. So it just kind of helps to bring the two pieces together. I was going to add some pattern paper strips to the top and bottom, but I thought that would, then the two sides of the spread just wouldn't really look like they belonged together. So repeating that stamping worked really well. I also added some stitching just with some plain white cotton around each of those pages. I pretty much do that with all of my Traveler's Notebook pages and or spreads, layouts, whatever you want to call them. I just like the added texture that it gives, and I really like having all of my projects with a little bit of a border. I don't know why, that's just my personal preference. Everybody's a little bit different, but for me, a page or a layout or a spread doesn't really feel complete unless there's a border. It's almost like I feel like things are going to fall off the page without the border there. So that's why I do my stitching. And while I've been chattering away about stitching, I am backing each of these photos. I already added a really thin white border white mat around each of them with just some scrap cardstock. And then I'm adding another little patterned paper mat behind each of them. I've tried to choose patterns or colors that they're quite soft, but they're complementary. So there's similar colors going on in each of those behind each of those photos. They're sort of like the peachy, salmony pink colored tones. I've got a nice big block of journaling here because there was a little bit that I wanted to say about this event. It was a concert that one of my very best and oldest friends and I went to in March 2023, and it was quite a special, significant experience for us. So I did have a fair bit that I wanted to say about it. I thought about hiding the journaling, but there was this big space in the middle here and I had the room to do it. So I figured I would go and type that out on my computer. The reason that I type it out on my computer rather than on my typewriter, number one, because the font is quite a bit smaller. Number two, because I am working with a limited amount of space. And for me, when I'm working in these traveler's notebooks, it's easier for me to do that on my computer in Photoshop, because then I can restrict the space that I'm using and plan it out a little bit better. And I used a die that I have in my stash. It's kind of like a stamp, like a postage stamp sort of die with a stitched border. So I used the blue, that bright blue that's in the letter R. So I've repeated that over on the right hand side, and that's to match the journaling. Also helps to make that journaling block stand out a little bit because it is a white piece of paper. It has the potential to get a little bit lost. So adding that nice bright blue border helps to reinforce the fact that there is a good little story there. Now, once I laid these pieces down, I realized that the borders behind my photos on the right-hand side were just a little bit too wide. So I've grabbed out my trimmer again and I've just trimmed those down so that they're a little bit smaller. And now I can fit those nicely onto that page. So I'm starting with the journaling because it's fairly centered. It's not completely centered because the two photos at the top are not as long, not as high as that photo down the bottom. But I thought I'd start with that center journaling block and then work my way out from there, just making sure that the spacing between the journaling and the photo on the bottom and the journaling and the photos on the top is about the same. And I'm really not going to do a whole lot in the way of embellishing here. There's not a whole lot of room to embellish on traveler's notebooks as it is. You can see you've got quite a small amount of space to work with. But also just looking at it, it was already fairly busy. So I didn't want to add a whole lot and detract from the lovely photos and the wonderful story. So I grabbed a stamp set from my stash that had this little here and now, and I've used the raspberry ink to stamp that. I also had this little remember this piece which came from the ephemera pack, and then I'm going to finish off with just a couple of these little puffy heart stickers, and that's going to go on each of the little embellishment pieces. Now, of course, there are some close-up photos coming in just a moment, but I do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I'd love for you to go ahead and leave me a comment or give me a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed, I would also love for you to hit that subscribe button and join me on my upcoming paper crafting adventures. But I will leave it there for now and say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.